Right now, as you watch this video, you're completely dependent on something so fragile it could vanish in seconds. And when it does, 90% of the population won't survive the first year. In this video, you'll discover the 3 catastrophic threats that could take down the electric grid tomorrow, the terrifying timeline of how society would unravel week by week, and the critical survival skills that separate those who make it from those who don't. By the end, you'll understand why the comfortable world you know is balanced on a knife's edge, and what you need to do about it right now. Welcome to Crisis Horizon, where we explore the realities most people ignore until it's too late. If you want to stay ahead of the curve and prepare for what's coming, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a video that could save your life. Most of us flip a light switch without a second thought. We charge our phones, keep our food cold, and stay connected to the world through an invisible network of electricity that powers everything we take for granted. But beneath this veneer of technological comfort lies a terrifying truth. The electric grid is far more vulnerable than most people realize, and when it fails, not if, but when, the consequences will be catastrophic. Let's start with the threats that keep security experts awake at night. The first, and perhaps most insidious, is cyber warfare. Our electrical grid relies on complex systems called SCADA, supervisory control and data acquisition. These automated systems control power generation and distribution across entire regions. They're efficient, yes, but they're also exposed. A skilled hacker or a hostile nation could infiltrate these networks, inject false data, and manipulate load balances to push transformers beyond their operational limits. The result? Catastrophic failures that cascade across the grid. Here's what makes this truly terrifying. The oversized transformers that form the backbone of our power network are custom-built behemoths. They're not sitting in warehouses waiting to be installed. If widespread sabotage takes out multiple transformers simultaneously, we're looking at repair timelines measured in months, or even a full year. Imagine an entire year without power. That's not a blackout. That's the end of civilization as we know it. But cyber attacks aren't the only threat we face. Physical sabotage is just as dangerous and requires far less sophistication. Critical substations, the nodes that step voltages up or down across the network, can be destroyed with simple tools. High-powered rifles, explosives, even coordinated attacks with basic weapons could cripple vast regions. These substations are often poorly guarded, sitting in remote areas with minimal security. Their components aren't readily available for replacement, and a coordinated attack on just a handful of key locations could plunge entire states into darkness. Then there's the threat from above. Electromagnetic pulses. An EMP could come from 2 sources: a nuclear device detonated in the upper atmosphere or a massive solar flare. Either scenario would fry the delicate electronics in everything from cars to generators to airplanes. Unless equipment is specially shielded, it becomes useless junk. History gives us a preview of what this could look like. In 1859, a solar storm known as the Carrington Event was powerful enough to set telegraph lines ablaze. Back then, we barely relied on electricity. Today, a similar event would be apocalyptic. Our entire infrastructure would collapse in an instant. And here's the kicker. Our grid wasn't built for the demands we're placing on it today. Much of the infrastructure was designed decades ago for smaller populations and simpler industrial needs. Spare parts are scarce, specialized repair crews are limited, transportation of replacement components is slow and logistically complex. The system is already stretched to its breaking point, operating on razor-thin margins. One major failure could expose just how fragile this network truly is, triggering a cascade that spreads across entire regions before anyone can stop it. So what happens when the grid actually fails? Let's walk through the timeline, day by day, week by week, month by month, because understanding this progression isn't just academic, it could save your life. Day 1 starts with a flicker. The lights go out. Most people assume it's routine, a storm, a blown transformer, maybe a minor technical glitch. Phones still have battery, though data networks are spotty or down completely. There's an almost universal assumption that utility workers will have everything fixed by nightfall. People wait, they hope. They tell themselves this is temporary. By day 2, that hope begins to crack. News is scarce. Cell towers are operating on backup generators, but those have limited fuel supplies. By day 3, the creeping realization sets in. This isn't a normal outage. Anxiety transforms into something sharper: fear. Water becomes the first critical concern. Municipal water systems rely on electric pumps to maintain pressure and circulate through treatment facilities. When those pumps stop, the taps run dry. People who act quickly fill bathtubs, sinks, and every container they can find. But for those who hesitate, the preciousness of water becomes brutally apparent as their supplies dwindle to nothing. Communication systems begin to fail completely. Cell signals become unreliable or vanish entirely. Internet is gone. Emergency services are overwhelmed or offline.
The unprepared, and that's most people, are blindsided by a chilling question. What if this doesn't end soon? By the end of the first week, the breakdown of order begins. Grocery stores have been picked clean of perishables within days. Delivery trucks can't access fuel because gas stations rely on electric pumps. Hard currency is the only accepted form of payment, but its value is plummeting fast. People don't want paper. They want tangible goods: food, water, medicine, ammunition. Barter becomes the primary form of transaction. Desperation drives people to looting, but not for luxury items. This isn't about stealing televisions. People are breaking into stores for survival essentials: bottled water, canned goods, batteries. Pharmacies are ransacked for painkillers, antibiotics, insulin, and other critical medications. Law enforcement struggles to maintain order as their own vehicles run out of fuel and their communication systems break down. Meanwhile, those who had the foresight to stockpile supplies learn to keep a low profile. The hum of a generator or the smell of cooked food can make you a target. Week 2 is when survival mode truly kicks in. The initial shock wears off, replaced by grim determination. In cities, you see rivers of people fleeing on foot. Highways become parking lots of abandoned cars, their fuel tanks empty, their owners long gone. Water crises intensified dramatically. Municipal reservoirs run dry. Sanitation systems fail completely. Human waste piles up in streets and buildings. Waterborne diseases, cholera, dysentery, giardia spread like wildfire through densely populated areas. All perishable food is gone. For people who depend on refrigerated medicine, like insulin-dependent diabetics, this is a death sentence. Makeshift markets emerge where people barter whatever they have for whatever they need. A can of beans for a gallon of water. Antibiotics for a working flashlight. Skills become the new currency. If you can fix a generator, purify water, or grow food, you're suddenly invaluable. Communities that figure out how to collaborate, sharing resources, organizing security watches, dividing labor, stand a fighting chance. Those that don't fracture into chaos. Weeks 3 and 4 are where creativity born of necessity takes over. People build solar stills to distill water. They salvage wind turbines to recharge batteries. They make vinegar from fermented fruit scraps to use for cleaning and food preservation. But scavenging for supplies is increasingly dangerous. Desperate individuals form violent gangs. Criminal organizations seize control of remaining resources: warehouses, water sources, fuel depots. Government efforts to repair the grid are hampered by complete chaos and the breakdown of communication networks. National coordination becomes impossible. Local survival is all that matters. In volatile urban areas, people reinforce their homes, barricade doors and windows, and form neighborhood defense groups. Disease, violence, and starvation claim lives at an alarming rate. Bodies begin to accumulate faster than they can be buried. By month 2, daily life revolves entirely around survival. City dwellers either migrate toward farmland or barricade themselves in fortified enclaves. Urban streets are filled with trash, filth, and vermin. Hospitals, if they're still operational at all, are shadows of what they once were. Triaging cases with minimal equipment, no power, and rapidly depleting medical supplies. Mortality rates soar. Mass graves become common. The sight and smell of decaying bodies is an inescapable reality. Yet even in this darkness, the human instinct for community persists. Groups work together to build crude water filtration systems. They salvage wind turbines to recharge batteries. They make vinegar from fermented fruit scraps to use for cleaning and food preservation. But strengthening loyalty networks begin to transcend traditional family structures. People form new families united by the common goal of survival. But isolation is dangerous. Collaboration isn't just helpful, it's essential. Thieves and scavengers prey on the vulnerable and isolated. Official institutions, police, fire departments, social services are largely absent. The line between healthy caution and debilitating paranoia blurs, but small traces of resilience appear as humans find ways to work together despite the horrors surrounding them. Month 3 brings a stark reality. Major cities are gutted. Municipal services have collapsed entirely. Disease spreads rapidly through cramped, unsanitary conditions where thousands are packed together. Starvation looms for anyone without renewable food sources. History teaches us that extreme desperation can drive people to unthinkable acts, including cannibalism, though such cases remain rare even in the worst scenarios. Governance becomes chaotic and fragmented. Some local authorities attempt to enforce martial law, but their reach is limited. Militias and warlords emerge, controlling resources through intimidation and violence. Travel is perilous. Highways are junkyards littered with stripped vehicles. Roads are patrolled by armed gangs who rob or kill anyone trying to pass through. Bicycles and sturdy boots become more valuable than cars ever were. Survivors who make it this far establish daily routines to maintain sanity. Rationed meals, manual labor from sunup to sundown,
Patrolled perimeters, simple crafts to occupy hands and minds. In some areas, order begins to emerge from the chaos. In others, anarchy reigns supreme. Communities that manage to stabilize form rudimentary councils to resolve disputes and organize security. Trade begins to reappear as villages exchange eggs, grain, salted meats, and other preserved goods. By month 4, the relentless anarchy of the early weeks begins to subside, largely because populations have dwindled so dramatically. Survivors adapt to a slower, more deliberate pace of life. People wake with the sunrise and rest when darkness falls. Agricultural efforts expand as former office workers learn the brutal, backbreaking realities of farming. Salvaged solar panels and micro-hydro equipment become prized assets, powering essential lights and communication devices. Older skills experience a renaissance: candle making, blacksmithing, soap crafting, hand sewing. These crafts fill the gaps left by the disappearance of mass production. Trust becomes a resource as precious as water. Betrayal can unravel fragile social fabrics in an instant. Communities hold meetings to allocate farmland, organize patrol schedules, and resolve disputes. Some settlements see the rise of petty dictators who rule through fear. Others maintain shared power structures and democratic decision-making. Trade and alliances between communities encourage mutual benefit, but every journey beyond your settlement involves significant risk. Amid constant hardship, new bonds form that run deeper than blood. Communities share sorrow and survival, forging family-like relationships built on loyalty and interdependence. Month 5 brings more structure to enclaves that have survived this long. Clear roles emerge within communities: farmers, security leads, medics, mechanics, foragers, teachers. Yes, teachers, because education becomes critical for long-term survival. Children need to learn basic literacy and arithmetic, but also practical skills like crop planting, animal care, and tool maintenance. They need structure and hope for the future, or the next generation will be lost. Long-term survival depends on sustainable practices: planting crops, preserving seeds for future seasons, storing water, managing livestock. Communities build protective enclosures for animals, harvest fodder, and cache supplies in multiple locations to spread risk. Skilled trades, carpentry, blacksmithing, midwifery, become the cornerstones of these new societies. Medical care relies on creativity and herbal remedies. Antibiotics from the old world are long gone or carefully hoarded. People turn to traditional medicine, plants, roots, and natural compounds that treat infections, pain, and illness. It's primitive by modern standards, but it works often enough to save lives. Emotional trauma is pervasive. Depression, guilt, and anxiety haunt survivors who've lost loved ones and witnessed unspeakable horrors. Nights are long and dark. Without electricity, there's little to do after sunset. Communities organize gatherings to share stories, songs, and memories. Conversation becomes a form of therapy, reminding everyone that they're not alone in their suffering. External threats persist: raiders, criminal crews, local tyrants looking to expand their territory. Defensive strategies range from simple fences and booby traps to organized guard posts with makeshift weapons. A single violent raid or disease outbreak can unravel months of painstaking progress. By month 6, the old world is truly gone. Electric lines hang dead and useless. Populations may be down by a third or more, perhaps even half in the hardest-hit regions. The countryside is dotted with small enclaves and settlements, each with its own rules, culture, and dangers. Some trade peacefully with neighboring communities, others remain secretive or openly hostile. Urban cores are split between tenacious survivors who've learned to scavenge effectively and wild animals that have reclaimed abandoned buildings. Militias and security councils have morphed into de facto local governments.
They ration resources, guard wells and water sources, and enforce laws, sometimes justly, sometimes tyrannically. Control of resources means control of people. Some leaders genuinely try to rebuild a functional society. Others sink into despotism, enriching themselves while their people suffer. Yet ingenuity persists. Small dams generate trickles of electricity. Solar arrays power ham radios, allowing communities to communicate over short ranges. People share information about weather patterns, crop yields, and threats. For children born during these dark months, this is simply normal. Their lives are shaped by foraging, manual labor, candlelit nights, and constant vigilance. The older generation remembers the ease and abundance of the past, but those memories fade with each passing month, becoming stories told around fires rather than lived experiences. Survival is a daily grind. Harvesting, hunting, scavenging, defending, repairing, building. New cultural norms emerge, forging smaller worlds within the darkness. The blackout is no longer an extraordinary event. It's simply the way life is. So what can we learn from this terrifying scenario? How do we prepare for something that seems so overwhelming? First, understand that practical skills become the ultimate form of currency when technology fails. A college degree won't save you when the grid goes down, but knowing how to blacksmith will. Carpentry, midwifery, horticulture, food preservation,
herbal medicine. These abilities are invaluable when hospitals close and stores empty. If you can grow food, purify water, build shelter, or heal injuries, you become essential to any community's survival. Water purification is perhaps the single most important skill to master. When the taps run dry, every other aspect of high-tech existence crumbles. You can survive weeks without food, but only days without water. Learn multiple purification methods: boiling, chemical treatment, filtration, solar distillation. Store water purification tablets and portable filters. Identify natural water sources near your home. This knowledge could mean the difference between life and death. Food preservation extends your survival timeline. Learn to can foods, smoke meats, and ferment vegetables. Understand which crops store well and which need immediate consumption. If you have space, start a garden now. Learn which plants grow in your climate and how to save seeds for replanting. Even a small balcony garden gives you hands-on experience that could prove critical. Medical knowledge becomes life-saving when hospitals fail. Take a first aid course. Learn to treat common injuries and illnesses. Study herbal remedies and natural antibiotics. Stock a comprehensive medical kit with supplies that don't require refrigeration. Include antibiotics if possible, along with painkillers, antiseptics, bandages, and sutures. But here's the most important lesson. Solitary survival is a myth. It might work for a few weeks, maybe a month if you're extremely well prepared and lucky, but long-term survival depends entirely on community. Groups that pool resources, share knowledge, and organize defense have exponentially better odds than individuals going it alone. Trust becomes as valuable as food or water. You need people you can rely on, and they need to rely on you. Start building those relationships now. Get to know your neighbors. Form connections with people who have different skills than you. A mechanic, a nurse, a farmer, a carpenter. Diverse skill sets make a community resilient. Shared knowledge enables innovation. When one person figures out how to purify water more efficiently, everyone benefits. When someone successfully grows a crop that others failed with, that knowledge spreads. Collective problem solving is more effective than individual struggle. Trade networks between communities allow for specialization. One settlement focuses on growing grain. Another raises livestock. A third produces tools and metalwork. They trade with each other, creating mutual benefit and interdependence that makes everyone stronger. But communities only work when they're built on cooperation, not coercion. Betrayal destroys trust, and trust is the foundation everything else is built on. One person hoarding resources or sabotaging others can unravel months of progress. That's why establishing clear rules, resolving disputes fairly, and maintaining shared power structures is critical. Preparation isn't about paranoia. It's about prudence. A small stockpile of essentials buys you critical time when panic sets in. Store non-perishable food. Keep water on hand. Maintain a basic medical kit. Have manual tools that don't require electricity. Hand crank radios, manual can openers, matches, candles. Keep important documents in waterproof containers. Have cash on hand, though understand its value will disappear quickly in a long-term crisis. Understanding the vulnerabilities of our infrastructure helps you prepare intelligently before disaster strikes. Know where your water comes from. Understand your local food supply chain. Identify critical infrastructure near your home, substations, water treatment plants, hospitals. This knowledge informs your preparation and helps you assess risk risk. But here's the kernel of hope in all this darkness. Humans are remarkably adaptable. We innovate when cornered, we band together when there's no other choice. Communities can rebuild. They can generate small amounts of power. They can establish stable mini-societies that produce enough food to survive and even thrive over time. History shows us this again and again. After wars, natural disasters, and societal collapses, humans find ways to rebuild. It's not easy. It's not pleasant. The journey is filled with suffering and loss. But we endure, we adapt, we create new societies from the ashes of the old. The strongest communities aren't built on isolation or fear. They're built on cooperation, shared purpose, and mutual support. When the lights go out, these are the communities that survive. These are the people who rebuild civilization, one small step at a time. Hope doesn't come from believing the grid will never fail. Hope comes from understanding that even if it does, we have the capacity to survive, adapt, and eventually rebuild something new. Maybe not the same as what we lost, but something functional, something human, something worth preserving. The electric grid isn't just fragile. It's one bad day away from complete failure. But now you know the timeline, you know the threats, you know the skills that could save your life and your family's lives when that day comes.